Hey, everybody. I am thrilled to have my guest here with me today, Sarah Kimmel. She is a host of a super informative and engaging podcast called Family Tech Talk, as well as creator of FamilyTechZone.com. Her site and podcast assist parents to become more familiar with technology their children and teens may use. Sarah is also a regular NBC, CBS, and Fox News family tech contributor, a mom of two teenagers, and has been an IT manager for over 2 decades. Welcome, Sarah. I am so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, Sarah, your platform is just incredible. I have learned so much since I discovered you and feel like it is helpful and relatable to all parents, all moms, from the novice to the expert. And you're just so engaging. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how Family Tech came to fruition.
Sure. Like you said, I've been in IT for over 20 years. So, mainly, most of my career was spent helping small to medium sized businesses with their IT support. So, anything from my computer has a virus to my entire server is down. Mostly with like an IT consulting firm is
Mhm.
basically where I've been in most of my career. But during the course of that, I had my children and all of my friends and neighbors would ask me questions, oh, what should I do about this? Because I knew a lot about technology. And so it just came to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm putting it all on a blog and you can just go there for the information. And since then, I've kind of pivoted my content. I do a lot more on YouTube and Instagram these days. And then, of course, my podcast with Family Tech Talk. So I'm kind of you, going with the times and seeing what where people need to consume the content and kind of trying to position myself there to really help families be the expert in their home, so that they can manage the technology because everybody needs to be an IT manager these days to manage all the tech in the house.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I feel like it is so important for all of that. And before discovering all of your material, I was always like, my husband's an IT consultant. So I'm always asking him questions. Oh, go ask your dad. Like, dad knows this. And you have like empowered me with all your information as to like, okay, maybe I can do a little bit of this. Maybe I can learn. And so that's so exciting. And really appreciate all you have to offer. Now, Sarah, tell us, how can us parents get more involved in what our kids are up to online? I feel like it's just such a vast territory, an unknown territory for a lot of us. So how do we start doing that? How do we start having those conversations or getting more involved with that?
Yeah, like you just said, having those conversations is, the number one thing. If I am walking by my child who is, hanging out on a website and they laugh, oh, hey, what's so funny, and just really getting involved or playing the game that they're playing. So when Fortnite was a huge thing, I encouraged parents to get on Fortnite too and play the game with them as well. Because as you are where your kids are sharing, then you are understanding a whole lot more about what they're up to online, and you're able to kind of further those conversations like, hey, I saw you post this thing, let's talk about it, maybe it wasn't that appropriate or whatever. And then you can just further those conversations, but if you're not there, you're not going to know what's going on. And so just making sure that, like I said, if you're walking past and see them doing something, or like, oh, they're on Minecraft, oh, that looks really interesting, to tell me what you're building. And so just getting involved that way, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. And I am starting to learn a little bit about all of these social media apps that teens are using. My kids are still a bit younger, but I am having my 7, almost turning 8-year old. She's starting to, be exposed more to it. I know time goes so fast and I need to get up to speed with all of these things. So I noticed that on your platform, you talk about like Snapchat, TikTok, and kind of give some recommendations for all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on these platforms?
Sure. So most social media platforms require the child to be 13 to sign up. So I see so many parents, biggest mistake they make is allowing their kids to use it at 10, 11, 12. The platform themselves, you have to lie about your child's age in order to sign up for the platform before they're 13. And that just sets a really bad precedent for the kid. Oh, if I want
Yeah.
something, I just need to lie about it and then I can get it.
Yeah.
And so, the age is 13 for a reason. It's actually against the law for these companies to have data about your child that's under the age of 13. So that's why they just prevent it. So the data company or the tech company can get in trouble for having that. So your child's account can get deleted, you know, automatically because if the company finds out that they're under 13, then they'll just delete the account. And so all of that progress or friends they made or whatever will be gone in an instant. And that can be heartbreaking too for your kids. So just save
Hmm.
yourself a lot of heartbreak and wait until they're 13 when they're legally allowed to have the platform. So that's my first kind of thing about social media. The second is one of the most surprising things that I usually say about all of the social media platforms is that TikTok actually has the best built in parental controls of any social media platform. So if you're going to start with anything, I would actually honestly start with TikTok because it has those great controls, but you have to set them up. So
Yeah.
the controls in TikTok will actually prevent your child from logging out of the protected account on their device. So they will remain protected. They can't switch back and forth to like an unprotected account. And then you can limit who can see their content and what they can see and who they can talk to. And all of these things that are really great tools for a parent to be able to establish real good real rules and things about social media. So I recommend TikTok as the first kind of
Okay.
foray into social media. And actually Be Real is my favorite because Be Real does not have any direct messaging. It is not something that's going to suck them in. They're going to Yes, there's that distraction feature where if it goes off in the middle of class, like everybody wants to like take their Be Real. But but other than that, they're just going to look at all of their friends' Be Reals and then be done. Like there's no algorithm or anything that can suck them in. So Be Real is an also
Okay.
really good starter social media, I like to say. Uh,
That's
but
good to know.
yeah. So then the other ones, Instagram, a lot of people will say, well, I won't allow Snapchat, but I'll allow Instagram. But they don't realize Instagram actually has most of the features that Snapchat has. So
Okay.
like, well, if you're going to allow one, you might as well allow the other because they both have these disappearing messages. And so you need to be aware of the features that Instagram has stolen from other platforms. So,
Mm.
if you're not going to allow TikTok, but you allow Instagram, well, all of the TikToks are on Instagram. If you're not
Mm.
going to allow Snapchat, but you're going to allow Instagram, it has disappearing messages like Snapchat. So, just being aware of all of the features that are in the platform. So, Instagram, I would wait, until they're using TikTok or Be Real very appropriately,
Mm.
and then
Mhm.
move on to something like Instagram or Snapchat. Snapchat, their algorithm is terrible. TikTok has the best algorithm available,
Mhm.
but Snapchat's algorithm is terrible. Like even when I log on to Snapchat, like none of the stuff that's on the like discover feed is something that I would want to watch. So I don't
Yeah.
know who they think I am, but it's not like, and it's generally not appropriate either. So I would really
Yeah.
wait for
Yeah.
Snapchat until about 16 or so.
Okay. And is when I was learning about the TikTok algorithms, which is really interesting, I was surprised with that. And that's good to know. And do I need to have my own TikTok account in order to set up all these controls?
You do, yeah. And
Okay.
I, like I said before, always be where your kids are sharing. So if your child
Yeah.
wants a Discord account, you get a Discord account. Use the platform, find out what is available. And because most of the parental controls that are built into the platforms, you need an account on that platform in order to set it up.
Okay.
So you would set up their profile underneath your profile, and then you can monitor it or manage it through
Hmm.
that. But yeah, so you do need your own TikTok account, you need your own Instagram account, you need your own Discord account, like whatever your child wants, you need to get an account on that as well.
Okay, that's good to know. And that leads me to my other question about the contract, you call it, as far as how do we talk to our kids about when they're ready? And all kids, I feel like, are a bit different. So maybe one when they're 16 is more able to handle it. They've shown that you can trust them with
Mhm.
some of these versus maybe not so much another one. And I know you break it down into 3 categories, this contract. Can you talk to us about that? Because I thought that was super interesting and helpful.
Yeah, so my contract is a little different from a lot of tech contracts out there. And like you
Mhm.
mentioned, I have 3 different categories. So the first category is basically coming to an understanding together as a family as to what is going to be considered inappropriate in your family, because you can't just say in your contract you're not going to post inappropriate content and then not define what that is. Is that going to include violence? Is that going to include certain types of language? Is that going to include sexual content? So you need to really define what is considered inappropriate in your family. And then a
Mhm.
couple other things that I think kids should just understand about technology, and so that's included in the first section of the contract. Like, okay, you understand that nothing that you post online is private, and nothing I post online is private. It's not because you're a kid; it's because that's just the way technology works. There's servers out there. Somebody can screenshot. There's so many ways anything that you think is a private conversation can get out there to people you don't want to get out there. So,
Mhm.
that understanding. So, the first section is basically just developing an understanding of certain things that you will agree to as a family and certain things about technology. So then
Mm.
the second section is the stuff that most tech contracts have, is the stuff that I, as the teen, am promising to do, in order to use this technology. So, okay, I promise that I'm going to have parental controls on the device and I'm not going to try and circumvent them. And it's going to be shut down from this time to this time. And I'm going to, anything I post is going to be appropriate. And when I'm talking to another human, I am looking at the human and not at my phone. And so things like that. So
Mhm.
that's like the section that the teen promises to do with the technology. Then the third section would be what the parent promises to do, because that's what a contract really should be about, is a give and take. And
Yeah.
so it's not just I'm the teen, I have to promise to do all of these. So I, as the parent, also promise, okay, when you send an app or time extension requests, I'm going to approve them in a timely manner. Like, as long as I'm not like driving, my son will text me over and over again, like time, 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 time. I'm like, dude, I'm driving. You want me to get in an accident? So, I'm not going to approve it in a timely manner in that scenario, um,
Mhm.
but I promise, like, if I am at my destination, then I'll go ahead and approve it. I won't like keep you on the back burner. But then I also promise to do some of the same things that I am requiring my child to do. Like if I am
Mm.
talking to you, I will put my phone away, just like I require you to put your phone away when you're talking to me.
Mm.
And there's certain areas where we're not going to be on technology and things like that. So I really think the 3 sections really help make this tech contract, and the contract itself is just about, if I'm going to give you the access to use this device, then this is what you're going to agree to. And not following this is going to result in loss of access to the device.
Mm.
And so I really like to compare giving a device to your child as like a software license. So when you buy like a game, you don't own the game. You can't make changes to the game. You can't make changes to the software. You just bought a license to use that software, or a
Mm.
license to watch that movie or something like that. So
Mhm.
you are are just really giving a license to use the product. You don't own the product. And so these are the rules that, basically, this is your end user license agreement, is the tech contract.
I love that. That's great. And I feel like having that, like you're saying, like having it into the three sections is really, I think, relatable to kids. It makes it just having that conversation. And I love it having adults also accountable, like putting our
Right.
phone down, having that face-to-face communication. Because I feel like even now, gosh, I have to put my phone in another room a lot of the time.
Right.
It's just like so distracting. And
Yeah.
yeah. So now, how can we access that contract? Do you have it on your website, or how can we get a hold of that? Because I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so my website, Family Tech Zone, if you sign up for my email newsletter,
Mhm.
and I promise not to spam you. You get one email a week, and it has usually a tech tip in that email, and then just kind of what I've done. My latest YouTube video, my latest podcast episode, and things like that. So it's not going to be super spammy, but if you sign up for the email newsletter, you will be emailed the contract for free.
Great. Okay, that's good to know. And so, going back a minute, I just want to recap with we have you recommend TikTok first at age 13 is obviously we cannot do before 13,
Right.
but TikTok and as well as Be
Be real.
Real.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, Be Real, I just learned of that from
Oh,
your posts. And it kind of reminds me of like when I was in school, like we would just randomly, like, I don't know, all coordinate in the classroom to like drop a book at the same time. And like the
right.
teacher,
Yeah.
we thought it was like so funny. And the teacher was like, what was that? Is that kind of like what's going on? Or like, what is this? Like they're just taking a picture?
Basically, so it's supposed to be like the anti-Instagram, so not like all curated. It's like
Ah,
they send out a notification to basically everybody on the app at the exact same time. So like,
okay.
I'll be like chatting on Marco Polo with my friends, and like the Be Real notification will come in. We'll be like, "Oh, hang on, I gotta go do my Be Real," and then. So it sends out a notification to everybody. And one time it was really funny. I was out for a run, and the Be Real notification came in, and I was at a stoplight, and I could see people in their cars like pulling out their phone at the stoplight, taking their Be Real. And I was like, I know what you're doing. Um,
That's awesome. I
yeah,
think
so
I want to join this now.
you really should. Um, but the funny thing with Be Real, though, it gained a lot of popularity like last year. All the kids wanted it, all the kids were using it, but it's really died out quite
Mm,
a bit.
okay.
But my nieces still post their Be Reels every day. And so and then they're teenagers. My kids were never into it to begin with,
Mhm.
but and my friends, so you get this notification, and everybody in the world gets the notification at the exact same time, and you have 2 minutes to take your Be Real. And it takes a picture of the like forward facing camera and the back facing camera at the same time. So it like shows exactly kind of where you are and what you're doing at that exact moment. Now, if you are doing something and you can't take your Be Real, you can take it later. It's just going to say that it was like however long late, right?
Oh, okay.
And so, um, it's really fun to kind of see what everybody's kind of just doing, and you can't see anybody else's Be Real until you take yours.
Mm, mhm.
So, like, you can't just like lurk. You have to take your own Be Real in
Okay.
order to see other people's Be Reals. It is actually really fun. I don't take a Be Real almost like every day because most of the time I'm sitting right here at my desk, and so
Yeah.
it gets kind of boring. I'm like, oh, here I am working again.
Yeah.
So I don't take it every day, but
Yeah, yeah.
anytime I wanna see my friends Be Reals or something, like, I'll definitely take one so I can see them.
That's great. Yeah, that's super exciting. Now, I guess if it's all at the same time, are people sleeping? Like, do you have to wake up for
You know,
that? Is there an alarm?
I think they're US hours. I've never seen it happen in the middle of the night.
Mm,
It's happened late a couple times. Like, I'm an early bird and I go to bed at like 9:30, and I think
yeah.
I've seen it happen like at 10 sometimes, and I'm on mountain time. So,
Ah,
but I've never
uh-huh.
seen it happen like in the middle of the night. It's usually at some point during the day.
That's good to know. Now that brings me to some things I want to talk with you about, because I was very interested to learn about the Surgeon General recommendation. I know you talk a lot about that, and the warnings that, like the pros and the cons of social media, and there's a lot we can talk about with that. Now, as far as I read the report, it was so interesting. Like I felt like there was remind me there's like a couple points of like action points for
Oh
everyone,
yeah.
it sounds like, which
Yeah.
is great to have accountability from from
Yeah.
macro to micro.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the end of it's amazing because this is like what government can do, what tech companies can do, what schools can do, what parents can do, what teens can do, and like a whole page of stuff that each like group can do to help with the problem.
absolutely. The one thing that I took note of, well, a lot of things, but the one thing that kind of stuck out in my mind just with the younger kids, I feel like we're sometimes having these conversations now, but definitely with teenagers and older kids as well, as the sleep issues, and like how is that interfering with our sleep, like when you're on a screen time. Like I remember when I was in nurse practitioner school, they would talk about, I mean, this was back more than 10 years ago now, about not having TVs in the room, all that type of stuff. But now we have this screen, this little TV, like just all the time. Now, what do you recommend for your kids so they are able to get adequate sleep and develop, with those, with an adequate amount of rest?
Yeah. I was prepared to hate the Surgeon General's advisory
Yeah.
because, most of the stuff that comes out of the government, I feel is too overreaching, too fear mongering, and all of the things. I love technology.
Mm.
I love using technology. And so I
Hmm.
was prepared to totally hate it. I love, love, love the advisory. It is amazing. I read the whole thing on a YouTube live. It's actually, I downloaded the audio from that YouTube live. So there's a podcast episode where I'm basically reading the entire thing. So if you don't have time to read it, go ahead and get on my podcast and find that episode. But and it's labeled as a bonus episode anyway. Um, but he talks about the sleep function, and that is one thing that I have always like preached because like I said, I go to bed at like 9:30.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
I love my sleep. It was when I mean, and I've always loved my sleep, and I'm a good sleeper. Second I hit the pillow, I'm like out. And I sleep like really hard all through the night. So one of the things people say is like, to take the technology and like put it in your room for night. That never really works for me because I am like out. If my kids came back into my room and took their
Mm.
devices, I would never know about it. So
Hmm.
I usually take a technology approach in order to shut everything down so that everybody can get an appropriate amount of sleep. And so I do this through layers of technology. So the first one would be an on-device control. So if you have an Apple device, it would be the screen time management. If your kids have an Android device, then it would be Google Family Link, and you can shut down the device from this time to this time automatically every night. They like turn on their phone and it just says time's up. They can't do anything with it.
Mm.
They can make an emergency phone call, but that's about it. And you can do that with all devices. Almost everything has built-in controls. So you set up the bedtime on the Nintendo Switch. You set up the bedtime through Microsoft Family Safety, and that covers any like laptops that you have that are Windows based. It also covers an Xbox. You set it up on the PlayStation. I mean, you're gonna have to set it up in a lot of locations, but
Hmm.
and Google Family Link also covers Chromebooks. So,
Mm. Hmm.
so setting up that built-in control because they could be using their device. Like if I shut down the Wi-Fi, which I also do, I'm talking about layers. So I shut down the internet for the whole house at a specific time every night. So that means I get my sleep, my husband gets his sleep, the kids get their sleep. The internet is off for the entire family. Like I said, sometimes you need to model the appropriate behavior. And And so the Wi-Fi shuts down, but if you don't shut down the phone too, they could be playing games that don't require online. They could download
Mm.
videos and watch them later. There's a lot of stuff you can do on your phone without internet access in order to use it. So using
Ah,
those built-in controls for all of the devices that you have in your house, and then also shutting down the internet at the same time.
mm. That's helpful. That's good to know. And it reminds me of you were saying in a previous episode about like with Jurassic Park with teens and if they'll find a way.
Right, yes. Life finds a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a kick out of that. So it's like having those layers.
Yes, yes.
And I want to talk about that as well as a bit more. There's a couple other things that I wanted to touch base on that Surgeon General, and then also about parental controls.
Yeah.
So with that Surgeon General as well, gosh, I feel like we all know the negative effects of social media, and we're just learning some of it. And we don't have time. We don't have our teens, our kids don't have time to have that luxury. So what do we do? What do we do now to help? Now, talking earlier about Snapchat and like the streaks and the quantifiable data of being
Right.
cool and
Yes.
comparison and all of that. It's just to that developing brain. Gosh, I can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the mental health aspects of social media and all that?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, you understand what you mean by the quantifiable data, but the other people haven't
Yes.
listened to my talks about this. So teens these days, when I was a kid, you kind of knew who the popular kids were. Like, okay, these ones are the popular kids. But these days, they have quantifiable data to tell them who is better and who is worse. So I post something on Instagram and my friend posts something on Instagram, like at the same time, there's the same kind of picture. They might even be the same picture, like we're both like taking selfies together or whatever. And they get 200 likes and I only got 10 likes. That is data that I can see, like, oh my gosh, people like her more than they like me. And so that is really damaging to kids' mental health. And I know Instagram is doing things to kind of mitigate that, where they're not showing the numbers of like how many likes. It just says like, has a lot of likes, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things that the tech companies are doing to help with that data that they can see. But like you were saying with the streaks too, kids these days are using their Snapchat streaks as a measure of their relationships. So if I have a really long streak with you, then I'm better friends with you, or we have a closer relationship than this other person where I only have like a 10-day streak with them. And the streak is I've Snapchatted you and you've Snapchatted me for, however many days in a row. And
Mm-hmm.
so they do all of these things to keep these streaks alive. So if they get grounded or if they're going on vacation where they're not going to have access to their phone, they'll give their password to a friend to have them log into Snapchat and keep their streaks alive
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't lose these like precious, precious streaks. And that just helps, bring in the addictive nature of social media,
Yes.
where I have to log in and, continue these streaks in order to like prove my relationship. And so, trying to help your kids understand that the streak doesn't measure your relationship. But I also like to help kids, if this is really important to them, and they're grounded from their phone, maybe I'll put their Snapchat account on my phone and let them log in and continue their streaks and then log back out. Just because
Mm-hmm.
they're in punishment doesn't mean you have to completely, destroy their lives as they would think but,
Yes.
just to help them see that you understand that this is really important to them. And that way they're not giving their password to somebody else or something like that, but
Mm-hmm.
they're able to keep that streak alive.
Yeah. Sarah, about parental controls, is there anything to talk about or to know about that? I also wanted just to touch base on Chat GPT, because that seems to be a new term. So if you could talk with us about those two things.
Sure. So on parental controls, just being aware of what parental controls are available to you on any platform.
Mm,
Like I said, Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 5, like almost everything has built-in controls. And so just making sure any type of device that you are giving to your child, know what kind of parental controls are available to you and set them up.
mm,
So
mhm,
I think, and that really helps with like time limits. One of the things we missed talking about with the Surgeon General's
mm,
advisory
mhm.
is, they had these studies where social media was damaging to these people's mental health, teens,
Mhm.
and if they just reduced it to like 30 minutes to an hour a day, it
Yes.
improved their mental health. So it's really
Mhm.
important to understand it's not really the social media itself, where there can be problematic things in social media, but it's more the time they're spending on it. If they're just spending
Yes.
hours and hours a day, that it continues to deteriorate. So setting these
Mm.
parental controls where you're setting time limits and you are allowing them some access, but making sure you're managing it and monitoring it. Um,
Uh-huh.
with the parental controls, you get always the pushback. Don't you trust me? And what I always tell parents to let their kids know is not about trust. It's not that the government doesn't trust us to stay seated in our car when we're driving. That's not why seatbelts are required.
Mm.
Um, they're required because they're going to protect us when something goes wrong. And
Yes.
so that's what I kind of compare to parental controls. It's just there to protect you, to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So,
Yeah, like, and the amount of time, it's that amount of time. And I love how you mentioned that even if it is like 30 minutes less, just baby steps, because I
yeah,
mean, for us as adults too, I mean, it's hard sometimes to put that phone down. But I
right.
know, like, when I just go outside, just even if it's for a few minutes and get out of the screen, it just, my mind is just so different than what it was like, when I was doing, my face was in the phone screen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so then back to the ChatGPT
Yes.
thing. Um, there is a misconception among kids, among parents, and everybody that ChatGPT is a search engine, and it is not a search engine. It is a language model. So what it's doing is it's taking all the language that it's learning and trying to come up with the answer that it thinks you want. And so where this can be dangerous is when you believe everything that ChatGPT says. So there was a court case back in New York, in federal court, where a lawyer used ChatGPT to do his case study research
Mm.
and or case law, and asked ChatGPT, hey, is there a case about this? And ChatGPT's like, sure, there's a case about this, here's the case. And it had like case number and everything like that. So the lawyer uses this in his brief and submits that to the court. The opposing counsel is like, I can't find this case. Like, where did you find it? And then he goes back to ChatGPT. He's like, this case is real, right? And ChatGPT's like, yeah, boo, of course, of course, this case is real. And so he submits that, like the responses from ChatGPT to the court. And he's getting sanctioned, almost lost his law license
Mm.
and things like that because ChatGPT completely fabricated the case. And that's what it can do. It's called hallucinations in ChatGPT. And that will, that it's just going to give you the answer that it thinks you want. The math questions, like sometimes if you ask ChatGPT, how many letters are there in family? It'll say like there's 6 letters in family, and then you're like, "Oh, are you sure? Oh, actually, I
Mm.
was wrong. There's 9." You know,
Mm.
and you're like,
Wow.
"Well, no, there's not." So there's a lot like so you take ChatGPT with a grain of salt, and that's what kids really need to understand is, they think it's a search engine and they use it as a search engine, and when it spits back something that's completely false, that might be, they need to be able to discern what is real and what is not. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing with AI technology is trying to determine what is real, because there's AI generated images that look, completely real, that might be fabricated. So, not believing what you see and what you read, is something that kids really need to understand, especially with all of these AI tools out there. And then the last thing about ChatGPT specifically, aside from the hallucinations, is that if you're trying to use it for homework or something like
Mm.
that, teachers are smart. They know what to do. So they will put the question that they're asking on their test or their essay or whatever into ChatGPT themselves and see what ChatGPT spits out. If you submit that exact response, which I have a friend who's a professor, and his last essay, he got at least five that were exactly the chat gpt response,
Oh, wow.
and he knew it was the chat gpt response because he put it in there.
Uh-huh.
So don't think you're pulling one over on your teachers by using chat gpt for your homework. For one, it lies, and for two, they're gonna know.
Wow, that's so interesting. And gosh, I wonder if kids, like when they grow up, if they'll have nightmares about that. Like, how you have the recurring. I think like the other night I had the, oh, did I go to that class? Like
Right.
maybe they'll have, chat GPT or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think it is very interesting, gosh, technology, and I feel so inspired by you, Sarah, because I I was so scared of it. Like, it just was a scary thing for me. And my husband, it was always like, oh, he knows how to do it, like I was saying earlier. But I feel like you are encouraging us to say, you can learn about this. Like, you can't, like, it's that growth mindset. And it's
Yes.
just, working at it. And, just day by day with practice, I can learn more about this. And so I love all of that. Um, can you touch base real quick on online safety? I know you had an episode about that, and I know just moms, like, we're all concerned about those things. And is there anything that I know you had mentioned? Like grooming behaviors with like Discord was what, like, you also had that officer Gomez, I
Yeah.
think his name was. Can you talk some
Yeah.
more about that?
Yeah, I mean, online safety. How
Yeah,
long's your
gosh, yeah.
podcast?
Let's have another episode on all of that.
Right. So I think the important things to realize is, monitoring what your kids are doing, putting filters in place is going to be really important.
Mhm.
Because that's going to prevent access from some inappropriate content. It's not like a silver bullet. There's ways around it. Any filter that you put in place, they're not going to be perfect. It's going to allow things in that you don't want to come in.
Mm.
So really having these conversations with your kids about what you think is inappropriate, what to do when you come across inappropriate content, is going to be, the most important thing you do is just having these conversations. There's a great, if you have really young kids, Google actually has a really great online safety game kind of thing. It's called
Hmm.
Be Internet Awesome. Um,
Okay.
and I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but that's why I said like younger kids might get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
But kind of goes into online safety and if somebody's offering you this coupon, or not coupon, but like free stuff. Is this real and things like that. So it really helps them like avoid scams, avoid predators, and things like that. So
Yeah.
Be Internet Awesome is a really good resource, and it's from Google. And it's just online, like just an online game.
Hmm.
And so that just education, I think, is really important. Educating your kids about the different scams that are out there, and how they can get perpetrated. So when I come across a news article about a kid falling for some sextortion scam, you know, they end up sending nude photos to somebody and now they're being extorted. I'll sit down with my kids and say like, oh my gosh, did you see this news article? And not in a fear-based place, but in a like, hey, this is the things that can happen online. What would you do different?
Mm,
And, how would you avoid this so that like this news article is not about you? And so really taking that fear out of it, like you were saying, you don't
mhm.
want to come from a fear-based place. You want everybody to really understand what it can do, what it can't do, and go from there. So that's kind of the high level online safety. Make sure you filter the content and know about scams.
Yes. Now, do schools now teach anything? Like, are there classes for like more like that? High schools and stuff. But are kids
Sure.
learning that? Or I guess it probably depends on districts and all of that
Right,
too.
right.
Um,
Yeah. There's a like you've all heard of Red Ribbon Week. There's a White Ribbon Week that is all about digital and online safety that you could encourage your PTA or whatever
mm,
to do, and that's going to help. But there's no real like curriculum that kids are going through that has like digital and online safety, so you definitely have to teach that in your home. But
no.
White Ribbon Week is a great way to start, especially if you're involved in your kids' elementary school.
That's good to know. Yeah. Again, like with this, just from all levels, like us, as families knowing about it, the kids knowing about it, and schools, and so on and so forth. Gosh,
Right.
you know, Sarah, I feel like I can talk with you like all day with all my questions. So interesting. Now, your website and your podcast is so much information. Can you tell us again how to find you? I really encourage our listeners to check out everything that Sarah has to offer. Like I have been like in the past couple of weeks, just like blown away. I mean, like you guys got to check this out. So, can you tell us how we can find you?
Sure. I'm Family Tech on all platforms. So if you just look for Family Tech, you can find me no matter what platform that you are, most interested in or most consuming.
Hmm.
But I'm most active on YouTube and on Instagram. If you have questions, I usually answer all of my direct messages on Instagram. So if you have like a specific tech question, feel free to reach out to me there. And then obviously sign up for my email newsletter on my website, Family Tech Zone. You can get that tech contract. I am starting to sell a new 10-day tech reset. And so it's basically, like I said, it's not a take away technology for 10 days. It's not a detox or anything, but it just helps you be more intentional about your tech usage. I haven't advertised it much. It just got finished. So you might be able to see that on the website as well. And then Family Tech Talk, my podcast. So
That's awesome. Well, I'll definitely put all of that in the show notes so our listeners can access, and looking forward to hearing everything that you have to say. And it's an absolute pleasure, Sarah.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be here.
Thank you so much.